What is up, everybody, and welcome to The Final Stab, Episode 7. Always feels good to come back to the podcast. What is up, everybody? This should be a pretty fun episode of The Final Stab because we are going to talk about, I am going to talk about horror television shows. It is a very long list. I've been doing research, and I've honestly never thought about it because there's a lot of horror TV shows. Don't get me wrong, there's a shit ton of horror movies, but when you really think about it, there is a lot of horror TV shows. Horror television, I'd say, is in its prime right now. I mean, if we're talking modern horror television, I would say maybe the top 4 would be Walking Dead, American Horror Story, Supernatural, Stranger Things. Even if you don't watch these shows, everyone knows these shows. So I thought this would be a fun topic just to talk about horror television, especially with Chucky Season 3 premiering today. That's when this episode should be out. But before we get to Chucky Season 3, I just want to dip my toes into how I feel about horror TV shows and the ones that I like, the ones I haven't seen, the ones I grew up with. I'm definitely going to just briefly talk about the childhood shows. I think that'd be really cool if I do that for a separate episode, is talk about a bunch of horror stuff for kids, like Scooby-Doo, Courage the Cowardly Dog, I mean, you name it. I think it'd be cool if I separate childhood horror and horror TV shows, because there is honestly a lot of gateway horror films. I think that'd be a great episode, actually, is to talk about gateway horror, which, like I said, I can only imagine. I'm already surprised how much horror television shows there have been, so let alone when it comes to the stuff that kids have access to. Honestly makes sense looking back as to why I even liked horror in the first place, because I had so much access to it, even if it wasn't anything that was really that scary. I think it's really funny how many adaptations there have been when it comes to big horror characters. I'm talking Freddy, Chucky, Jason, Michael Myers. I'm aware of the recent Halloween news that we got, but like I said, just give me a minute and we'll talk about that. Yeah, so in all honesty, when it comes to the very popular horror television shows, I mean, if we're gonna go way back, I'd say the most iconic ones we can really think of would be The Munsters, Addams Family, The Twilight Zone. Twilight Zone's a banger. Anthology horror, I think, is one of the best horror subgenres out there, and it's definitely one of my favorites. I always liked watching The Munsters and Addams Family, the original, even the movies, and Wednesday. I'm sure everyone and their mother has seen Wednesday, but I don't want to get this too messy here, but I will start off with how I feel about modern horror television shows. It's really funny. I never watched The Walking Dead. I couldn't get into it. I remember when the first episode had premiered fucking way back, fucking centuries ago, and now it has it's 30 spin-offs, and it just I couldn't really. I'm sure it's a cool show. I'm sure there was a time where it really was a banger, but just wasn't really for me. Zombies are cool, but I was definitely more into slashers. I was honestly really late into the game whenever it came for American Horror Story. I think I really started watching it when it was actually premiering on television, when season 5 came out, so Hotel. I remember when episodes were starting to premiere back on Netflix. This was over 10 years ago. My family was really into it, so I was just that's cool, but I guess I won't check it out until they're no, but it's really good, you really gotta check it out. And I'm all right. And yeah, that first season of American Horror Story, which American Horror Story is huge still, and it's still going today, without a doubt, that at least that first season, it's okay if you don't fuck with American Horror Story, but I think it's pretty unanimous that everyone would agree that that first season is actually really good, and that's why it really kicked off to really good stuff. Coven is my favorite, Asylum's really good, Murder House, of course, is iconic and such a classic. Freak Show is great. Funny enough, I'd never finished Hotel. I thought Roanoke was so stupid, was not a fan. Cult was not bad. When I watched Cult, I thought it was decent. I remember I watched every week, and I was obviously still invested in the story, but I remember just thinking oh, okay, it was fine. It's funny because I rewatched Cult not too long ago, maybe 2 years ago or something, and I was that actually was pretty fun. I like Cult. Apocalypse was just the fan service season. I feel if anyone who had never seen American Horror Story was to tune in on season 8 would be what the fuck is this? But I liked season 8. I thought Apocalypse was great. And right now it's in like in a weird place because a lot of people are trying to like shit on it, which is like whatever. But I really liked Apocalypse. 1984 season 9, which was 1984, was really cool. Obviously, it's 80s themed, it's slasher themed, it's all the stuff that I love. So I thought it was one of the best ones. Then this is when I really started to kind of dip on American Horror Story. I saw season 10. And it was a great premise. It was called Double Feature, where half the seasons were going to be 2 different stories. I'm like, that's really cool. That's really interesting. They've never done that before. I watched the first story on the Double Feature. It was really cool right until the end. I thought the end was so stupid. Like, they really shit the bed at the end there. And then I watched the beginning of the second story, and I was like, this is so stupid, and I just couldn't do it. And then I also would just really, I had a bad taste in my mouth after watching American Horror Stories. When they announced American Horror Stories, I was like, that's dope. So, because obviously with them, if you don't know, with American Horror Story, it's a whole season that's just consistent of just one whole story with characters, and it's really cool. I really enjoy stuff like that, and I like how it changes each other season. But whenever they made American Horror Stories, it was just going to be episodes that were going to be changed, which I was like right on board when they announced it. I'm like, that's badass. But until I saw it, and I was like, yeah, no, that was pretty fucking terrible. I maybe liked 2 out of like, I think they did maybe like 6 or 7 stories. I'm not too sure. I know it's still going. I didn't care to see it because I had such a bad taste in my mouth. I thought it was just so like, just so stupid. Like, I just thought like, this is like so like cheap. You can tell it was cheap because it was just gonna be on Hulu. It was gonna be on like network television, and you can tell the budget was low, and it was just so like predictable. It just felt like boring, and I don't know. I wouldn't mind going back to rewatch it. I've heard that some episodes from the other seasons are not bad, and I wouldn't mind checking it out. Yeah, I wasn't a fan, and so right after that, I didn't really care to see anything else after American Horror Story. Season 11 had came out. I said, sure, I'll check out the first episode, and I was not really intrigued. It wasn't bad. I just didn't really care for it, and it was just really weird. Like, there was no marketing for it. It just kind of came out, and no one's talked about it. Literally nobody has talked about. It was called New York City. No one's talked about it. I couldn't tell you a single thing. I remember, I think it was about like, I think it was a whodunit kind of thing. It was about like a murder, but I don't know. I just wasn't on board until now with season 12 called Delicate, and Emma Roberts was announced to come back, and Kim Kardashian, and I'm like, what? Kim Kardashian's going to be in American Horror Story? I mean, it's interesting. It's very interesting. I can definitely say that. The last thing I saw Kim Kardashian act in was Disaster Movie, and that movie's a masterpiece. No, I'm just kidding, but I was just like, okay, that's interesting. And I know it's out. I haven't seen it yet, but from what I've heard, it's not bad. So I might check it out. We'll see. I know it's only half a season now with, with all these writer strikes and stuff going on. I have no clue what else is going on with that. So hopefully everything gets figured out, and we'll see how things are next year for these horror TV shows. But now to get off of American Horror Story, I've seen like a little bit of Supernatural. I know it was fucking huge when it came out, but I know a lot of like tweens were into it, like kind of like when it was like Vampire Diaries and all that stuff. Like,
I definitely watched more like Buffy the Vampire Slayer than Supernatural.
I just, I'm sure it was a good show. I mean, how could it not be, right? If it lasted how many seasons? Like, wasn't it like 12 or 13 seasons? Something like that. Something fucking crazy like that. But no, never was into Supernatural. And I was also really late into the Stranger Things game. I remember when that first season came out, everyone was talking about it, and I was just like, okay, cool. I'm not really huge. I'm not like a big creature feature type person. If it's sci-fi, I really have to be interested. But I was just like, nah, I'm alright. Then the second season came out, I was like, cool, whatever. And then it's funny, I was spending summer at my grandparents' house, and my grandpa was just, he watches like anything that's like critically acclaimed. Like if he hears it on the radio or if he sees it on the news, he'll watch it. It's pretty funny. And he would just like, you want to watch Stranger Things? And I'm just like, yeah, sure, fuck it, let's watch it. And I really liked it. It's really fun. I like Stranger Things. I mean, how can I not like it? Like I said, of course, I like 80s. I love the music. I love the 80s type horror, the sci-fi stuff. No, it's a great show. The fandom is terrifying, but it's a good show, and I absolutely loved it. It was when season 3 had came out, was when I actually started watching it. Just couldn't wait to see each episode after I saw it. And yeah, I'm a Stranger Things fan, and I don't see a problem with it. But yeah, Stranger Things is fun. The recent season 4 was a banger. Oh my god, I loved season 4. To me, that's the best season. And we'll see how they do on the next season. I hope it's the last season because of how things ended. So we'll see. As I was talking about earlier, when it comes to like all like the very big IP, like very big horror characters like Freddy, Jason, Chucky, all of them, it's funny to think, no, they do have TV shows. I mean, I have a list down here. Let's go down it. What We Do in the Shadows. I haven't seen the show. I've seen the movie, and it's really fun. I like the movie a lot. So I was like, okay, I need to see the show, and it's still going. I think it's on like its 5th season now or something like that. Freddy's Nightmares is fun. I've never seen the whole show. It just honestly just because it's really hard to find access to it. I think the first time I ever heard of Freddy's Nightmares was back when I was younger. My uncles had it on VHS, and so I just watched it on there, just like random episodes. Yeah, Freddy's Nightmares was interesting. It was a really interesting show. It was kind of like an anthology type show, if I remember, and it's with Freddy Krueger, and it was like different stories, and you would think it's like, oh, that's cool, but it was very low budget, and I just feel like I would love to go back and watch that show. I'm sure it's a fucking blast. Scream got a TV show. Now, if we're going to talk about the Scream TV series, fuck, I can do a whole podcast episode of the Scream TV series. I absolutely loved it. It's really funny because I feel like it came out in such a weird time because it was, God, what was it, 2014, 2015 when it came out? I was absolutely on board because, you know, Scream 4 clearly was, Scream 5, especially at that time, was never going to happen. Little did we fucking know what was to come. But at that time, I just knew, oh, we are never going to see another Scream movie. Sidney's never going to come back. Wes Craven's never going to make another one. And I know he was still alive when season 1 came out. I think he passed away like when the final episode had premiered. It was something like that. I remember they did like a memorial or something like that. It was wild, but I was on board with the Scream television show. I think it's very unique. Granted, do they need to call it Scream? Not really. It just really just takes the premise of like a serial killer that, you know, calls you on the phone and kills you, and it's a whodunit story, and you find out who it is in the end. There was no ghost face mask. I remember there was some controversy for that, but honestly, I was on board with it, surprisingly. I feel like if it came out today, it would probably get more hate just because people are more negative and the internet's much bigger than it was back in 2014, 2015. No, Scream, the television show, I really need to go back and watch it. I loved it. The first season I remember thought was great. I think the second season I remember being the best one. Until that 3rd season, you know. I remember everything that was going on with the Weinsteins. They announced we were getting a season 3, but they were rebooting it, which sucked because they left us on such a huge cliffhanger in season 2 that they're like, well, at least we'll bring Ghostface back. So then we're like, oh, okay. So, like, all right, Ghostface is back. Roger L. Jackson's going to voice Ghostface. Tony Todd's going to be in it. Okay, that's sick. And then they're like, and it's going to be produced by Mary J. Blige and Queen Latifah. And I remember everyone was like, huh, interesting. And Tyga was in the show, and Keke Palmer. And this was before Keke Palmer was, you know, the Keke Palmer we all know today. This was her when she was like fresh off of maybe like True Jackson VP, if I really think about it. I remember I really liked Keke Palmer a lot at this time because I really loved her in Scream Queens, but I'm going to wait on Scream Queens because it's going to segue good until I talk about other stuff. But anywho, yeah, no, the Scream TV series is really good. The first 2 seasons were fun. I remember really liking it. It was very violent. Yeah, I thought it was solid. I thought MTV did a solid job. But then once that season 3 had came out, and they were calling it Scream Resurrection because it was a reboot of the whole show, and I did not like it. It was not good. I remember thinking like, this is not Scream, and Ghostface is in it. It's so funny. The first 2 seasons that doesn't even have Ghostface felt more like a Scream show, like a Scream movie, than the actual Scream season that had Ghostface in it. It was just so stupid. And just felt very like hodgepodge, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, Scream was honestly a good show. And obviously here we are today talking about fucking Scream 7, which is insane. But I really like Scream. Friday the 13th has a television show. Not a lot of people know that, except it doesn't have Jason. It's really weird. They tried making it an anthology show. I would watch a little bit of it back when it was on Chiller. Ugh, back in the good old days. I miss Chiller. Chiller was a dope fucking network. But I remember I'd watch it like very late night. I remember it'd be on maybe at like 2 a.m. And I remember being like, what is this? Because it says Friday the 13th, the show, and Jason's not even in it. And it was just like, they basically just took the name and just made it their own thing. And it was very bizarre. I'd watch it though today. I'm sure it's probably fun. I'm sure there's some pretty good episodes. Especially because at that time, I guess I'll talk about anthology horror television shows. I guess we got of course, the biggest one, my childhood favorite, Goosebumps, Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, Tales from the Crypt, Masters of Horror, Tales from the Dark Side, and of course the Twilight Zone, which is like the best of them all. Friday the 13th was weird. I think probably because, like I said, like the shows like Tales from the Crypt and Tales from the Dark Side, those were like very big anthology horror shows. So I think they just wanted to, maybe it was like a cash grab, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, Friday the 13th, the show was weird. I know they're going to do a television show with A24 and Peacock, and I have high hopes. Fucking poor Jason, man. In my opinion, because I'm Team Freddy, so I'm biased, but Freddy and Jason really need to come back. I mean, I'm happy Chucky and Ghostface, Leatherface, Pinhead, let's see, oh, of course, Michael Myers. I'm glad they're all still around and we're talking about them, but Freddy and Jason, it has been long overdue. We are in desperate need of more Freddy and Jason. I forgot, yeah, we're supposed to be getting a Pennywise show. Welcome to Derry. I believe it's done filming, if I'm not mistaken. Have no fucking clue what it's about. I know Pennywise is supposed to maybe be in it, but it's not going to be Bill Skarsgård. I don't know. We'll see. When it comes to stuff like that, it's like, how can you not have Bill Skarsgård come back as Pennywise if you're going to make a show about it? I think that's just bizarre. The Purge, yeah, holy shit, I forgot The Purge had a television show. I think it had like 2 seasons. I watched like the first half. I remember I was so excited because Fiona Dourif, who of course plays Nika in the Chucky franchise, was in it. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch this, and it was okay. I remember thinking like, how the fuck are they gonna make a Purge show? Because obviously the Purge movies take place in one night. So it's like, what, is each hour going to be an episode? I'm like, there's no way. It's probably just going to be filled with like nonstop flashbacks. And it was. I think I got like halfway. I wouldn't mind checking it out again. Like I said, I know there's 2 seasons and it got canceled. So why not? I'll check it out. If anyone's seen it, let me know if it's any good or if it's worth it. Because I just remember even when it was coming out, or even when the second season came out, like no one was really talking about it. The Mist. I forgot The Mist got a television show. I didn't check it out because I was just like, it's gonna get canceled, and it did. It got canceled. I was just like, all right, I figured. I have not seen Let the Right One In. I love the original, both of them. I think the American remake, and I believe it's Swedish, the Swedish horror film. The American remake is really good, especially, but I love both of them, both the international and the American version. But yeah, I know it turned into a show, and I think it got canceled. I'm not too sure, but yeah, I'd be down to check it out. From Dusk Till Dawn had a Netflix show. I didn't watch it. I think it also got canceled. I Know What You Did Last Summer got a television show on Amazon Prime. I watched that trailer and I was not convinced, and it got canceled. So many of these canceled television shows. Beetlejuice, I forgot, got a television show. It got like a cartoon back in the 90s. I've seen like a little bit of it. Would love to probably check the whole thing out. I'm sure it's really fun. Bates Motel. I watched like the first couple episodes of Bates Motel, and then I realized this is a lot to consume. There's like 5 seasons, and I think I could have sworn there's like a shit ton of episodes, and it's an interesting show. I thought it was gonna be more of a classic, like a remake kind of take on it, which it is, but it's definitely more of a reimagining, because as we all know, Psycho takes place in the 60s, Bates Motel takes place in modern times, so it's an interesting show. I wouldn't mind checking it out again because I know it was huge when it was out. I need to watch the Creepshow series. The movies are great. I love the Creepshow anthology movies. So the fact that they made a whole show out of it, and it's apparently really good. I believe it's on the 4th season now, if I'm not mistaken. I'm really far behind now that I think about it when it comes to horror TV shows, but just because it's so much to take in. It's easier to watch 90 minutes than hours worth of something. The Exorcist has a television show, and I hear it's great. I didn't want to see it because I thought it was gonna be bad. I was like, no, you can't make an Exorcist TV show with how fucking shitty some of those sequels are, except for Exorcist 3. Exorcist 3 is a masterpiece. I'm one of those people, and sue me. But anyway, Exorcist, the show, I hear is actually really fucking good, so I would love to check it out. How can I forget Ash vs. Evil Dead? I have not seen the final season because I don't like to think Ash's story ends, but I will. I just, I'm still trying to recover from Evil Dead Rise. I really liked Evil Dead Rise, but just the more I think about it, I just think of all the flaws, and it's too bad. But I need to rewatch Evil Dead Rise soon. I really should. It's October. Happy Halloween, y'all. Happy spooky season. So I really need to start gearing up for watching more horror movies. I like to watch I like to watch Halloween and stuff during this time and all kinds of other stuff. So I should rewatch Evil Dead Rise because I feel like I keep giving it a bad rap. I feel like I'm being too harsh on it. And I don't like to be harsh on Evil Dead because I love Evil Dead. Yeah, so that's pretty much it when it comes to like big television shows that adapted from classic horror characters I can really think of. I can't name every horror television show there is. I'd be here for fucking ever. So I guess I'll segue into Netflix because Netflix is huge when it comes to horror television shows. Like I said, fucking Stranger Things. Like everyone knows Stranger Things. My two underrated horror television shows on Netflix I can name right now would be Brand New Cherry Flavor and Santa Clarita Diet. I really like horror comedies. I think when you find either a movie or a show that balances the two genres well, I think it meshes really well. I think those are the best genres is horror and comedy. So yeah, Brand New Cherry Flavor is sick. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend. And go in blind. It's a great show. It's wild, but I really liked Brand New Cherry Flavor. Couldn't recommend more. And I loved Santa Clarita Diet, especially because it has Drew Barrymore and Timothy Olyphant. I think I'm saying his name right, or I guess I'll just say Casey from Scream and Mickey from Scream 2 as a couple, which is pretty funny. It's like Casey and Ghostface are a couple in a horror show. That's badass. It was a great show, and then it got canceled. Ugh, it sucked. Fuck Netflix, by the way. They fucking cancel everything good. They don't give us anything great, and if it is great, it takes forever to come out. Santa Clarita was a banger. I love that show, and it's quick. I think it was like 20-30 minutes an episode. I really recommend that. If you're into like, especially it's more comedy for sure, but if you're into like more horror, I would recommend Brand New Cherry Flavor. If you want more comedy, that'd be Santa Clarita Diet. Really miss the shows.
And let's not forget probably like Mike Flanagan's 50 fucking Netflix horror shows. I've never seen a single one of them. Those like Haunting at Bly Manor and Hill House and I have no idea the rest of them, but there's so many of them, and I hear they're like masterpieces. So I would like to check them out. But yeah, still need to check out Mike Flanagan shows on Netflix.
And God forbid, how can I not mention Wednesday? I liked Wednesday. Of course I like Wednesday. I love Addams Family. I thought Jenna Ortega did a great job, and it was long overdue. It's like Tim Burton has done everything. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Alice in Wonderland, Dark Shadows. He did fucking Dark Shadows, and I like Dark Shadows, and I feel like we don't talk about Dark Shadows enough, but it's like, how the hell has Tim Burton not done The Addams Family? And finally, he has done it. And it was great. I liked Wednesday. It wasn't perfect. I thought it was really cool how it was a whodunit type show. I'm a fucking sucker for whodunits if you haven't noticed, so I really wish that there weren't so many twists within the show. I know the twists were just so repetitive. Like there was constant like fingers being pointed at so many people that it kind of got a little convoluted. I think with the second season, which without a doubt it's gonna get, I mean, come on, isn't it literally Netflix's like most watched show ever, which is fucking insane. I do like Wednesday. Millions would agree, probably billions. I guess I can talk about also another good, I believe it was, I don't think it was a Netflix original, but it's on Netflix, and it was on Netflix forever, but Slasher. Slasher's a really cool whodunit show. It's funny, I recently watched the first season this year, and I was like, I don't remember it being this cheap. Because it's not bad, but it just kind of like, I remember when I watched the first season, this was so long ago, I was like really into it. I was like, it's badass, it's like really gory and stuff, and it's a whodunit story. And then watching it again, I was like, this is like really cheesy, but it's fun. I always like to watch cheesy stuff every now and then. So Slasher is really cool. I know there's some seasons on Shudder I haven't seen, but from what I've seen from Slasher, it's really good. Like I said, I want to save this for probably a separate episode if I talk about childhood horror, because there are just so many things I could talk about of things I was scared of when I was a kid, and the horror films and shows and things I was into as a kid. But I will talk about Goosebumps briefly because of that reboot that's about to be coming out, which I'll just be honest with y'all, I don't think it's gonna be good. It looks so stupid. But obviously the original Goosebumps show, even the books, I loved reading the books as a kid, and watching the show was a banger. Fuck, If you guys if anyone listening remembers The Haunting Hour, you're amazing. I fucking loved The Haunting Hour. I used to watch it so many times on TV. The Haunting Hour was a great blend. It was basically like, this was back in like, it was like late 2000s, early 2010s, around that time. But if you hadn't seen The Haunting Hour, it was a really good show. It was basically just like Goosebumps at that time, because it was a R.L. Stine show, and it was, I don't recall if any of them were off of any books. I could be wrong. If any of the episodes were based off of any books, but I could be wrong. But it was a banger of a show, and it was genuinely like horror. Like, it was like very minimal comedy, and like I said, this was late 2000s, early 2010s, so it is dark, it is bleak, it is very like it looks like it's, people would probably think it was like, if you were to walk in, you probably think you're watching like a Twilight movie, but no, it was like really good. I loved it. I wish I could find it. I think it's hard to find if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, Haunting Hour was a banger. I loved Haunting Hour. So the fact that like we could get more Goosebumps stuff, like, I was not a fan of the Jack Black movies. I remember I saw them, and I saw the first one in the theater, and I knew I was too old. I was already like a teenager whenever the Jack Black movies came out, and I remember going to see the first one. There was just like a bunch of kids in the theater, and I was just like, oh god. But so I was just like, yeah, I just wasn't a fan. The first one was whatever. Then I remember during COVID, I watched the second movie because it was like on Netflix. I was like, fuck it, I'll check it out, and I was just like, whatever. So when they announced that they were doing another reboot, and it wasn't going to be anthology, at least from what I got from that trailer, I was just like, yeah, no, this ain't it. This is not it. Not this. I don't think it's gonna be good, especially from that fucking trailer. And they played Travis Scott's Goosebumps. Why? Like, I get why, but it's just like so corny, and I don't think it's gonna be good. But I'll watch it. Why not? I don't think I know it's gonna be on Disney Plus, so I think it's gonna probably be episodes weekly. If I'm not a fan, I'll just say this: if I'll watch the first episode. If I'm not a fan, I'm not going to wait each week for other episodes. I will wait to binge it, or I just won't watch it at all if it's really bad. That's all I can say. And I hate that. I don't like to be negative, especially when it comes to things I love, but if I don't like it, then I don't like it.
And this probably won't be next episode's topic, but since it is October, it is spooky season. I definitely probably want to talk about the Halloween franchise just as a whole. I'll maybe rank it, just talk about each entry. I'll try to find a way to not spoil it, just in case if people haven't seen the Halloween movies. Even though if you haven't seen the Halloween movies, what are you doing? You got to see them. They're fun, and I want to talk about that, especially since with this week's topics being about horror TV shows. Apparently, A24 isn't just doing a Friday the 13th show, but there are rumors allegedly that they are also in talks of making a Halloween television show, and that's really interesting. So I like to probably save it for when I talk about the Halloween franchise in later episodes of the podcast, so I can really give my full thoughts of how I feel about that, what I think, because I think that is pretty out there. And I forgot to mention this before. It's kind of old news now, but apparently, because I know Robert Englund had talked about how he's never going to play Freddy Krueger again, which is very upsetting. But and I think about it, it's like of course I don't blame him. He's old, and I definitely just want to see Freddy come back at some capacity. It would at least maybe be nice if maybe Robert Englund can do the voice of Freddy. But it's like, well, I know there was a certain point where he did want to be Freddy, but motherfuckers are taking too long, and now he doesn't want to be Freddy no more, which is upsetting. Of course, we would love to at least see him just one last time to see Freddy come back, but just time will tell. But they're taking forever, man. We fucking need more Freddy Krueger out there. Technically, the last Freddy we got in a movie was Freddy vs. Jason, which was awesome. I love Freddy vs. Jason, so at least he kind of went out with a bang. And the last time we really saw Robert Englund was when he did that episode for the Goldbergs, which is really cool and was really fun, but it just, it would be just really cool to at least see one last time, right?
And not just, this is all just in terms of like horror television shows. I like web series as well. And I've talked about network television, like on cable and on streaming services, but the only stuff I can think of when it comes to like web series on like YouTube and stuff, obviously Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared is fucking great. Shout out to Chai and Xavier if you're listening. They got me really into Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. I can't believe I was so late into Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. I apologize. It was really cool. Same with the Walton Files. Walton Files is dope as fuck. I personally think it's debatably better than FNAF, but that's just my opinion. Also, get ready. It's October, guys. Get ready for Five Nights at Freddy's the movie. You know, damn well we're all gonna talk about it on the podcast. And of course, how can I not mention Scream Queens? You know, Scream Queens was a huge show that I very much loved. Scream Queens, and I remember like it was honestly a banger of a time whenever Scream Queens, Ash vs Evil Dead, Scream the TV series, when those were all coming out around the same time. It was honestly really fun. It was really cool to watch horror television shows like that, but I loved Scream Queens. And I've said this before in the past. That's not why my logo, as you may or may not know, my logo is the red devil from Scream Queens. I just really love that mask, and I love that logo so much. So that's why I wanted it to be my logo. And then it's like, well, I really don't help my case because I call myself the Scream King, but that's not why. It's just because it's a horror term. You know, as we all know, Scream Queens and Scream Kings, like Final Boys and Final Girls. Just to briefly mention that again, you know, that's not why that's my logo, but I am a fan of the show. Massive fan. That first season was so fun. It was just a great mix of everything. It was a great mix of a whodunit story, and it was campy, and it was violent, and they got fucking Jamie Lee Curtis to be in it. I remember just thinking, like, what? Like, this is a horror fan's dream, and I would love to rewatch Scream Queens. It's been a minute. I think it was just because I was so sad when that show got canceled, and I really wish they could bring it back as like a movie or something, because Scream Queens was so fun. First season was cool. The second season, I should rewatch the second season again, because I remember the second season being like pretty wild, because they changed. It was cool how they were gonna show like different killers each time. It was kind of like Slasher in a way, except Slasher is definitely much more serious. But even though the acting it's very goofy. So some parts can be like very goofy and very cheap, but Scream Queens obviously had like huge stars like fucking Ariana Grande, Abigail Breslin, Billy Lord, Emma Roberts, you know, very huge stars, and like I said, Jamie Lee Curtis. So yeah, Scream Queens was a banger. I loved it. If you're really into horror comedies, I was much more comedy based, so we love Scream Queens. And speaking of Scream Queens, I'm going to talk about a show not a lot of people know about. Scream Queens. Yes, there was a reality game show, competition show back on, I don't even know what it was on. I think it was on VH1 if I'm not mistaken. A show called Scream Queens, where these ladies would do a whole bunch of different games, like acting challenges, to win. I don't know if it was the grand prize was also money or to be in a Saw movie. And I loved that show. I haven't seen it in years, but I remember when it was out, I loved it because it was so cool. The fact that like these chicks were gonna be in a Saw movie, that was the grand prize. I'd fucking do it if they had a show like that still today. You get to be in a movie. That was badass. I remember the first season, the winner, I forget her name, but she was a trooper. She deserved that win because holy shit, the winner of the first season of Scream Queens got to be in Saw 6, and she gives it her all in Saw 6. If you haven't seen Saw 6, I highly recommend. It's great. But she is the one who chops her arm off in the very beginning of Saw 6. Yeah, that's how she got in that movie, that actress. She won a competition show called Scream Queens to be in it. And it was so fucking good, and it was so fun. I wish we had something like that. Another competition horror series I grew up loving was Face Off. Face Off was a badass show. I loved Face Off. It's kind of like RuPaul's Drag Race, but instead of drag queens, it was just makeup artists, and you don't lip sync for your life. You just go away. You just get eliminated. I very much loved Face Off and Scream Queens. Those are really cool horror competition shows. I can't think of any other horror competition shows out there.
Yeah, I think I can't really think of any other competition horror shows. Probably the Dracula from the Boulet Brothers. That's maybe the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, Scream Queens is cool. I think it lasted 2 seasons. I know the second winner got to be in Saw 7, the final chapter, and it was very brief. It was in the trap with Chester from Linkin Park, rest in peace. So I guess that's something, right? At least you got to meet Chester from Linkin Park. That was a dope ass show. I really wish we had something like that again today. Not a lot of people know about it, but I'm glad I mentioned Saw because I recently just saw Saw X, and my God. Woo! It was fucking good. Oh my God. Saw X, Saw 10, Socks, whatever you want to call it, was so fucking good. I cannot stop thinking about Saw X. This is going to be spoiler free, so don't worry. But Saw X was incredible. It was phenomenal. I cannot believe we are officially on the 10th chapter of the Saw franchise, and it's still that good. Don't get me wrong. When Jigsaw came out, I'm not going to be too harsh on Jigsaw. I can understand, back in 2017, when horror was honestly in a weird place. It was before Halloween 2018 when, horror really kicked off with the legacy sequels and stuff. Yeah, 2017 was kind of a weird year for horror. We were kind of getting off of all the bullshit fucking paranormal stuff and trying to segue into, what we kind of have now with these like slashers and reboots and stuff. I don't mind Jigsaw. I remember just not being fully on board with the stuff that they were doing because they were kind of fucking with the lore a bit. And so when Jigsaw came out, I just started thinking like, okay, that was solid. It was cool to see a modern take on Saw because it's, Jigsaw looks nothing like the other Saw movies. It's very clean. It's very it's very much just, takes the DNA of the movies but makes it more modern and stuff. But I don't mind Jigsaw, but it's not the best Saw movie, but it was still just such big hype that we were getting another Saw movie because, after that fucking stinker of Saw 7, that final chapter, everyone was just waiting and waiting and waiting for another Saw movie. I remember it was supposed to be called Saw Legacy, if I remember. They were going to call it Saw Legacy, and then they were going to call it Jigsaw as the final title. I was like, oh, okay, that's fucking dope. Yeah, Jigsaw's okay. I don't love it, don't hate it. It's just very kind of in the middle. When they announced Spiral was coming out, I was like, wait, who again? Chris Rock? Chris Rock is going to make a Saw movie. Let's do it. Let's do it. That's the most bizarre and insane thing I have ever heard. I was surprised a lot of people weren't like talking shit because they were probably like, that sounds so stupid. But I remember everyone just kind of being like, okay, keep talking. Chris Rock wants to make a Saw movie, and it wasn't like, like how I talked earlier about Scream Resurrection of Queen Latifah producing it. I thought it was like, is it like, okay, so is Chris Rock going to produce it? No, he's going to star in it. And who's going to be with him? Samuel L. motherfucking Jackson is going to be in a Saw movie. Say no more. So when Spiral was coming out, I was absolutely on board. I was like, okay, well, I do like the writers of Jigsaw, so they're coming back to do the Spiral movie. I like Spiral. I've said this before. I thought Spiral was really good. My only complaint is the twist. The twist isn't good. That's the thing with that. What I love about the Saw movies is there is always a twist. And yeah, Spiral's twist was whatever, but I was really on board with what Spiral had to bring to the table. Way more than I did with Jigsaw. I thought Jigsaw was just kind of making the, as if the Saw mythology isn't as convoluted as it is. They were making it more complicated in Jigsaw, so I was like, okay, Spiral's making it more simple, where it's more of a spinoff really because you don't have to see a single Saw movie to understand it, which was cool and refreshing. I always like when things are, refreshing but doesn't ignore the past. I like when things are still acknowledged within the mythology of it all. I was absolutely on board with Spiral. I thought Spiral was really cool, really fun. That was my only complaint, was just the twist ending. It wasn't really also that much of a twist because we all saw it coming, so that's my only complaint. But everything else I love. The traps are great, the music is great, of course. I love the look more in Spiral than I do in Jigsaw, and especially because they got Darren Lynn Bousman back, and Darren Lynn Bousman is one of the best Saw directors. Obviously, we love James Wan, who only did the first one. And then after that, Darren Lynn Bousman did the great Saw sequels like 2, 3, and 4. And then Kevin Greiter also did some good Saw ones. Maybe not Saw 7, but that's just my opinion. But or Saw 5. I think Saw 5 and 7 are probably my least favorite ones. Kevin Greiter did Saw 6, and I love Saw 6. Saw 6 has no right to be as good as it is. So, after Spiral had came out, it was upsetting to hear that a lot of people just didn't like it. They weren't on board with it, and it was mainly because John Kramer's not in it, or the Billy puppet. And it's like, I didn't mind it, if it's the ninth chapter and it's an interesting story, I'm fine with it. Don't get me wrong. Am I saying, well, they should make a Halloween movie without Michael Myers? They should make a Chucky movie without Chucky. I'm just saying, no, that's different because, John Kramer, of course, is the face of that franchise, but within the formula of Jigsaw, I loved how it was starting to become whodunits. Keep mentioning whodunits, but it's true. I liked how they were becoming these copycat killers of Jigsaw, and I was very much on board with it because, as we all know, John Kramer isn't the only killer within that franchise. We got Amanda, Hoffman, and then the rest. I was very much on board with how John Kramer wasn't going to be in it, but no one else was, and I think, it's too bad, but I just thought, okay, well, we'll see what they do with the next one. Maybe we'll get a continuation, a spiral, and we'll see what happened after the end, because they do leave us off on a cliffhanger, but nope, they announce Saw X, and John Kramer will be back, and it's like, okay, say no more, John Kramer's back, I'm happy. Then they announced that, but Kevin's coming back to do Saw again, and he was the editor from the very first Saw, so it's like, okay, we're getting someone again who knows this franchise, knows what's going on, getting the writers again from Jigsaw and Spiral, amazing, on board. And then they announced Amanda's coming back. All right, everyone sit the fuck down, we are going, everything, we are officially going to see this movie regardless, because not only did you get John Kramer back, but you're getting Amanda back. I mean, as we all know, from Saw fans, we absolutely love Amanda. I was just absolutely on board with what the hell was going to go on. But of course I was like, well, if John and Amanda are coming back, this has to be a prequel because they're very much dead. John Kramer died in Saw 3, and now we're already talking about Saw 10, so let that sink in. I was just absolutely on board. I was like, okay, this is taking place between Saw 1 and 2. Perfect, easy, not hard to miss. Technically, we're getting a direct sequel, so this fits very much in line with the legacy sequels that we have today and these requels and stuff, so this works. Only watch the first one. Really, the first two, though, in my opinion. If you're going to watch Saw X, watch 1 and 2. I was very much just like, all right, let's do this. I'm ready. And it's great. It's so good. It's easily one of the best sequels ever made of Saw. And I say that because the writing is so clever. It's great. The traps are fucking gnarly. There's one trap in this movie that had me so disturbed that I still can't stop thinking about it. And we dip into the mind of John Kramer. We make him the main character. That's fucking badass. As some of you may or may not know, I fucking love a good anti-hero story. I love putting the perspective of the villain. I've made short films about this. I'm a big fan of stuff like Devil's Rejects and House of a Thousand Corpses. I love dipping into the villain. Even as a kid, when I read comic books, of course I love the hero, but I was way more into the villain. It just because they're just so cool and they're just so interesting. Obviously, they're evil and you don't have to sympathize with them, but you can obviously humanize them. That's just my personal opinion, when it comes to making stuff like this. Fucking look at Joker for an example. I think when you add vulnerability, and I'll mention this too, because it's funny. I'm currently been making commentary tracks for my short films, and I'll mention this if I don't repeat, if I happen to repeat myself. But I think when you add vulnerability to your villains, it makes them so much more interesting. If they're just constantly evil and that's all they know is evil, it makes them kind of boring. Don't get me wrong, I know we've had the big bads like Thanos, even though we get some pretty cool vulnerable stuff with Thanos and the Avengers stuff, and of course fucking Darth Vader, if we're talking big movie villains. I'm just so glad that finally John Kramer is the main character and he is the focus, the main focus. He's not on the side. He's there. He's in the room when these people are doing these saw traps. It's so genius. And especially since fucking Tobin Bell, who is in his 80s, and it works in his favor because John Kramer is very much deep in cancer in this movie, so it very much works in his favor of how old he looks. Shawnee Smith looked pretty old as Amanda. She's supposed to look 20 years younger. You can tell that she aged, but obviously that's just something you can brush aside. And she has a horrible wig. It's so bad, but I love it because it's just in beautiful Saw fashion. But anywho, I just Saw X is so good. You will be amazed. That's all I can say. I'm sure people who probably thought this was going to be really bad, they're going to love it. I've mostly seen love. Like 9 out of 10 stuff I've seen online, everyone's just so happy. I'll even say it was way better than fucking Jigsaw. It's even better than Spiral. And I like Spiral. I still do. I would just say it is top 3. And it's really hard because I love the first Saw. Nothing will ever pass that first Saw movie, but Saw 2 is so good. But Saw X, Saw 10 is definitely going to be number 3. It's neck and neck right now as this recording. Saw X is just as good as Saw 2, and I think that's a good thing. So definitely you guys just really need to go see Saw X. It's so good. You will be amazed. If you didn't like Jigsaw, if you didn't like Spiral, I think you really will like Saw X because it really brings things back to basics and brings it back to the look and the feeling and just the entire tone of those early Saw movies, and I think you'll very much like it. So, and I'm on board if they make a Saw 11. I will be there day one. I'm very glad I saved this best for last, as like I said, today, as you're listening to this, when I upload this, today will be the premiere of Chucky Season 3. I am still blown away that Chucky has officially made it to 3 seasons. Technically, this is also Chucky's 10th chapter. Chucky's in the damn double digits. Technically, right? 7 movies, 3 seasons. This is quite interesting. As some of you should know by now, I'm a huge Chucky fan. Chucky and Ghostface are my top 2. I'm always been on board with Chucky ever since the beginning. There's not a single Chucky movie I don't like, excluding the remake, but I'm talking Chucky, Don Mancini's Chucky. I'm glad to see that there is a lot of love, as I mostly see online, for the Chucky franchise. Chucky's probably the biggest he's ever been. I can't believe I can go to like a fucking Spencer's and a Spirit Halloween and see that there's like Chucky merch. Couldn't see that 10 years ago. So I just think it's nice to see that Chucky's finally getting the recognition that him and Tiffany have very much deserved in these past couple years. I loved season 1. I thought season 1 was so good. I was absolutely on board with everything. There's some stuff that I have some complaints with when it comes to maybe the animatronics, some of the writing, some of the choices they had with some of the characters, but there's certain things of flaws that I see in a lot of, not even just Chucky, but just movies and shows that I see that I very much like, and it doesn't upset me as much as it does with some people. I think season 1 is so good. I love Chucky so much I couldn't even rank it, but I could say how I feel about the show right now. I would say that season 1 was a lot better than season 2. I like season 2. Don't get me wrong. I really like season 2. I think with the blending of how they did the seasons, like I've said before, season 1 felt like a great blend of Child's Play 2 and Bride. I mean that in terms of mixing the horror and the comedy. I thought it was executed perfectly, in my opinion. Season 2 was kind of a bit of everything because it felt like a blend of Child's Play 3 and Seed. And I mean that in a positive way, because I've never been a Seed hater. I've always loved Seed of Chucky and Child's Play 3. Like I said, I love Chucky in general. I saw there was definitely some hate for season 2, which was understandable. It was very campy and very over the top of some of the stuff they wanted to do. I like to say they just wanted to get it out of their system since they really wanted to camp it up that season. My biggest complaint with that season really was just because it felt like it was trying to eat more than it can chew. There was so many characters and so many subplots that were kind of all over the place, but I thought it was still a very well-balanced story. There was just so much going on that you can tell there was such a time crunch. If anything, I think it needed more episodes just because of how quickly they had to brush things off because they didn't have time with the 8 episodes. So I wish they would at least bump Chucky up to 10 episodes, but that's just my opinion. But of course I love Chucky. I thought I was absolutely on board with what was to come next. I'm always on board what's coming next with Chucky. So of course I was very big on them getting a season 3, and I'm so glad they got a season 3, but it's upsetting that they had to halt production due to the strikes and we're only getting half the season this year. So this is going to be really weird. when Chucky season 3 comes out. I'm excited, but I it's gonna be really weird because we're gonna be left on a cliffhanger and we don't even know when the next half is gonna come out. Are we gonna have to wait a whole year? Is it gonna come out in the summer or early 2024? I have no idea, and this goes for every other show. I know American Horror Story's newest season also had to do half the season, so we'll see. I am absolutely on board with season 3, especially because of the plot. The plot is insane. I'm too lazy to read the synopsis, so I will have my guest, Ghostface, read you the synopsis right now. Take it away, Ghostface.
In Chucky's unending thirst for power, Season 3 now sees Chucky ensconced with the most powerful family in the world, America's first family, inside the infamous walls of the White House. How did Chucky wind up here? What in God's name does he want? And how can Jake, Devin, and Lexi possibly get to Chucky inside the world's most secure building? All while balancing the pressures of romantic relationships and growing up. Meanwhile, Tiffany faces a looming crisis of her own as the police close in on her for Jennifer Tilly's murderous rampage last season.
Chucky is going to the White House. He's a terrorist. I think this is insane. Very, very, very insane. And why the fuck not? But honestly, it's interesting. This is interesting. A 10th chapter. Chucky is on its 10th chapter, and I'm still interested. I think this is absolutely bananas that Chucky is going into the White House and Tiffany's going to prison, which is very interesting. We're kind of getting a blend of both, you know. I feel like this is really interesting that we don't see it with a lot of horror movies, you know. Obviously, when we think of Freddy and Jason and Michael, you know, we don't ever see them getting arrested. I think that's the point of all the killers in every horror movie ever made, is that they're trying to get away with this shit. And we're going to see the balance of both. We're going to see Tiffany behind bars with the police and Chucky with the top of fucking security with fucking the president of the United States of America. It's so wild. I think this is absolutely batshit crazy, but I am on board because why the fuck not? And it's going to be a show, a whole season worth. I'm on board. I as much as I might be a super fan, but I'm very much still on board with this. I think it's very interesting. I think that's cool to see how Tiffany is gonna do in a prison setting. She's probably gonna lose her fucking mind, as if she didn't lose her mind already last season. I think it's fair to say, even though we're only gonna have half the season, I was very much impressed with that trailer. Looks like they're improving more on the animatronics for Chucky, which is very exciting. I hope to up the gore and of course up the scares. I don't mind jokes. I rather have it be very 70-30 when it comes to the horror and the comedy. We'll see how they do when it comes to the campiness, because we know they love to make Chucky funny. I don't mind it, but we don't need it too much, but we'll see. I also forgot to mention how fucking dope Chucky looks on that poster. That poster is beautiful. That's something I can definitely think the animatronics are probably definitely going to be improved this season, because Chucky looks good. Chucky hasn't looked this good on a poster in decades. Don't get me wrong, I love every Chucky poster. Obviously Bride is a good one, but obviously I think Chucky probably hasn't looked this good on a poster since probably Seed. The Curse of Chucky poster is badass, don't get me wrong, but Chucky looks just a little funny because you can tell they kind of didn't know how to not give away any spoilers, since obviously now we know that he has scars and Curse of Chucky, so they had to hide it. So he kind of has like those like weird like duck lips, but he doesn't look bad. And then in the Cult of Chucky poster, they definitely made him look very like full in the face and his eyes are very wide. He doesn't look bad, but like he looks really fucking good on the season 3 poster. The season 1 poster was dope as fuck, even though Chucky's only half of Chucky's face is in it, but it is really cool. Season 2 is okay. I like it, but you can just tell how like very quickly photoshopped it looks. It doesn't look, like I said, doesn't look bad. Just isn't my favorite, but he looks dope as fuck. What takes me out is probably the White House behind him, but you know, Chucky looks really fucking cool and really dope on that poster. I was really impressed. Give me a poster now, I'll take it. Especially how he's like fucking 100 feet tall. Looks like a goddamn kaiju in this bitch. Looks like he's ready to fucking fuck some shit up. But I will just say this. I'm very confident in saying I don't think season 3 will be as good as season 1, just because I thought season 1 was so good and so solid and a great introduction to the show entirely, but I think it will be better than season 2. I do. I think season 3 will at least be better than season 2, but not sure if it'll be better than season 1. And that's okay. I think it's perfectly fine, just as long as it's good and it's interesting and everyone's supporting it and checking it out. I think that's perfectly fine. So I'll let you guys know after I see this episode. Like I said, this is being pre-recorded before the show premieres. I'll let you guys know how I feel about the first episode. I'm very excited. Forgot to mention Devon Sawa is back again. He has played 4 characters. He's only been in 3 seasons, and he's played 4 characters. That's so funny. And I love Devon Sawa, so keep bringing him. I don't care. I feel like this time he can't get killed off this time, right? If it's his 4th time. I'm just very excited. I've talked about this before in previous episodes, so go back and check out what I said. But I'm sure I've said before that I'm very much on board with legacy characters coming back. I don't know if Karen and Mike will come back. We'll see. I would love to see Andy and Kyle come back. Wait, we know Andy's coming back. He's confirmed to be coming back. Not sure on Kyle yet. But I really hope we get more of them. We're kind of lacking a bit on the legacy characters. We need more. I want a whole episode worth of them, not just a couple minutes. I want a whole episode of just Tiffany, or a whole episode of Andy and Kyle, or whatever. I love the new kids. Don't get me wrong, they're great, and I know everyone else really loves them. So I'm sure that's why the writers and everyone wants to, keep them. But personally, I'm just gonna say it. One of them's gotta go. If it ain't Jake, if it ain't Devin, if it ain't Lexi, one of them's gotta go. Personally, I think Devin should go. Kill him off. Bring up the stakes. Keep bringing up the stakes, and fucking let Nico win. Let that poor girl win. I have some cool ideas of what I think they can do with Nika, but we'll see what they do this season. Other than that, I'm very much on board with Chucky season 3. I cannot wait to see what they do this season. I'm excited to see what they do this season, because it's so interesting. I definitely have no clue where they're gonna go after this, but I said that last season too, but we'll see. We'll see how things go, and I just hope everyone has fun. That's all that's important, right? As long as we're just having fun and having a good time. So thank you guys so much for listening. This was really fun. I know it's kind of all over the place this time, but it was just, there's a lot of horror television shows out there. It's hard to really break it down. I'm just so glad I finally got to talk about this. If you guys want me to go more in depth on specific shows or shows that I missed, please let me know. Like I said, I really want to dive more into like the horror television shows I loved as a kid, like a lot of gateway horror, childhood horror that I think is really cool. Definitely get ready, guys. It's October. Fuck yeah, Halloween, baby. This is the spooky season, so we're gonna have some fun, like I said, get ready. I definitely will be talking about how I feel about The Exorcist Believer next time, probably, which I'm excited. I'm gonna go support it, and I think you guys should too, because it's always good just to go support horror. And go check out my new video. I did a commentary track on my short film I did back in 2019 called Devil Child. If you haven't seen it, obviously watch Devil Child first and then watch the commentary track. And if you want, check out the documentary and probably listen to the soundtrack. But that's just my advice. But so yeah, go check it out. It was really cool. I can't believe it's been 4 years since I've made that short film, and I'm still very much proud of it. I've said it in the commentary track. I mostly had good things to say, but get ready for that. And there will also be a commentary track for Angel of Death, which is the sequel to Devil Child. And just, yeah, go check it out. It was a blast to make, and just as much as it's fun making these podcast episodes. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your day wherever you're at, whatever you're doing. Thank you so much for always listening. And definitely go out, check out Saw X, because it's fucking dope, and I think you'll very much enjoy it. And please send suggestions of what else you guys want me to do on this podcast. But like I said, go see Saw X. It's really good. Do-do-do, do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do, do-do-do. I'm not gonna sing. Bye, guys.